The convoy stalled at the ridge. Smoke drifted from the lead vehicle. Radios choked with static. Command's voice cracked through, asking for status. Then silence. Everyone looked uphill, expecting contact. No one looked at the terrain map blinking quietly at the rear console. Corporal Lee, seated behind 2 folding chairs and a half-drunk thermos, tapped one key. She rotated the overlay, then another. Mines. Buried weeks ago. Wrong grid filed. She didn't shout. Just handed the map to the nearest lieutenant and pointed. The reroute order came 5 minutes later. No one remembered who caught it. But the convoy kept moving. The hum of the server racks blended with the soft hiss of recycled air, creating a kind of artificial stillness that settled deep into the bones. The satellite imagery bay, tucked beneath 3 layers of secure flooring, held its cold fluorescent glow without apology. Most of the room was dark now, save for a strip of blue monitors flickering through thermal scans in tight, rhythmic loops. A single chair remained occupied at the far corner. Sergeant Hana Reyes sat motionless, leaning toward her screen with the posture of someone who had stopped feeling the weight of hours. Her hand hovered near the trackball, thumb steady as the infrared frames stepped forward one by one. On screen, the topography rendered in grayscale mountains to the west, flattened scrubland across the eastern grid. Each pass was identical, or was supposed to be. The thermal bloom along corridor Charlie 7 faded and returned like clockwork, a known heat echo from a decommissioned burn pit. Standardnoise. Then she stopped scrolling. There it was. A heat trail running northeast through quadrant 52. Too sharp. Too clean. A staggered column of bright white pulses, tapering forward in an exact 10-meter interval. Not random. Not drift. A convoy. Hana narrowed her eyes and tapped a command to isolate the signature. The overlay confirmed it. U.S. Thermal ID. But the terrain was flagged as restricted. No route authorization. No listed tasking. She didn't speak. Didn't frown. Just sat a little straighter. With 3 fingers. She dragged the slider back and played the loop again. The frames ticked by. Same pattern. Same movement. The vehicles were real. She checked the mission manifest. Nothing scheduled. She leaned back, exhaled slowly, and ran the pass once more. Then the system reset. The loop restarted automatically, as it always did after 15 minutes. The screen flashed black for half a second before stabilizing. When the feed returned, the anomaly was gone. Just like that. Hana waited. She clicked her pen once, reached under the lip of her keyboard, and pulled out a small blank, frayed notebook. Her anomaly log. No one had ever asked about it. She opened to a half-filled page, dated last week, and marked a new line beneath. She wrote the grid location, the timestamp, and one word next to it, persistent. Then she drew a small box around the margin and folded the page slightly before slipping the book back into its slot. The loop continued without her. Infrared shadows rolled across the screen in pre-programmed silence. Hana didn't move. She rested her hand near the trackball, but didn't touch it again. Somewhere 2 floors above, an air vent kicked on with a hollow rattle. She blinked once. Slow and deliberate. Behind her, the rest of the imagery bay remained empty. No observers, no confirmation, no orders pending. Just a single feed, looping quietly through the night. Forgetting what it had shown. Only Hana remembered. The watch floor came to life under harsh overhead LEDs, buzzing faintly above the clatter of keyboards and low, wandering conversation. Screens lined both sides of the room, each assigned to a rotating feed of archived satellite footage, mostly training loops. Pre-cleared for intern review. Hana Reyes sat 3 terminals from the end. her chair adjusted an inch lower than standard. The back support creaking, only when she leaned forward. She never did. A round hair? The room buzzed with casual rhythm. One analyst balanced a protein bar on the edge of his screen while arguing with someone about drone resolution tolerances. Another clicked through frames without pausing, nodding at nothing. A pack of jelly beans rested on a stack of printed weather overlays. No one looked particularly focused, but no one seemed worried either. Hana's monitor cycled through a loop labeled Training Archive 44B. The Q badge read, Archive Training in yellow. She tapped through it frame by frame. Expression unchanged. Posture straight. Her right hand rested over the mouse, unmoving, while her left scribbled something quickly in a small notebook tucked behind the keyboard. Its pages were soft with age, the corner folded precisely where she'd left off the night before. Hey, Reyes. A voice chirped from 2 seats over. It was Pritchard, the youngest on rotation. Head tilted, with just enough smugness to register. Ghost tracks keeping you company again. She didn't look up. Pritchard laughed at his own line, then swiveled back toward his screen. We should start calling you the Phantom Sensor. He added, just loud enough for 2 others to catch. One smiled politely. The other didn't react. The moment passed without friction. A supervisor made his pass down the central aisle, clipboard tucked under one arm, stylus in hand. He nodded once in Hana's direction without slowing. He stopped to review a heat map 2 terminals down but didn't glance at her screen. He didn't need to. Her feed wasn't active operations. Just another old simulation. She had been reviewing loops like that since the reassignment. The incident that put her there had faded from briefings but not from memory. A flagged drone path, she swore, showed cross-border traffic. No confirmation. No satellite correlation. Her report had been marked inconclusive and quietly archived. After that, she stopped receiving primary pass reviews. They never said she was wrong. They just stopped asking. Beside her monitor, a ceramic mug sat untouched. Its contents cold and sour. A faint ring had formed where it met the desk, overlapping the edge of her folded badge holder. She slid her keyboard forward an inch and lifted the corner of her logbook again. Her writing was small and clean. She added 2 lines under yesterday's thermal readout, one about flare variance, another tagged false negative, possible edge anomaly. No one noticed her write. No one asked. The room continued. Screens blinked. Voice layered. The archive feeds looped without interruption. And Sergeant Hana Reyes, quiet, still, and unseen, kept watching what no one else even remembered had passed. The screen displayed 2 thermal grids side by side, each time-stamped with different satellite passes 12 hours apart. The left feed shimmered with faint motion trails, a blur of thermal decay, while the right held the cleaner, more recent pass. Sergeant Hana Reyes leaned in slightly, holding the red pen cap between her teeth as her right hand toggled the overlay. A translucent grid flickered over both frames. She narrowed the angle and pulled the magnification tighter. Vehicle signatures emerged. Not the jagged bloom of improvised transport or off-grid utility trucks. These were heavy, even in infrared defined edges. Uniform spacing. Forward vectoring at interval distances, consistent with armored movement. She measured the spacing with a crosshair tool. 10 meters between each. 5 vehicles. Then a 6th with a tapering heat bloom trailing behind possible APC or refuel unit. The line moved through a sector tagged under United Nations protection. Humanitarian corridor. Designated Echo 7. She adjusted the contrast. Watched the bloom migrate southwest. It was a clean vector. Steady, but the terrain wasn't listed for exercises, let alone transit. The operational manifest, which she opened on a second screen, showed no tasking in the area. No join drill. No black flag marker. Nothing at all. She blinked once and leaned back. The room was quiet. Save for the low fan tucked behind the workstation, her heartbeat hadn't changed. But she could feel it behind her ribs steady. Waiting. She reached forward and added a third timestamp. The 36-hour window completed the line of travel. The convoy wasn't stationary. It was moving with purpose. Her hand hovered briefly over the internal alert tool. There was a protocol for unexpected U.S. movement, but it required direct confirmation and dual-key authorization to trigger full audit. She wasn't authorized to request that, not anymore. Instead, she selected a low-priority report form, tagged it as Simulation Artifact, Movement Discrepancy. She added 3 coordinates, a note about thermal overlap, and submitted. The system acknowledged the flag, then immediately routed it to a cold archive labeled Training Loop Variants. A yellow tag blinked twice auto-archived. No action required. She stared at the label a full 10 seconds longer than necessary. Then she opened her anomaly logbook again and wrote down the grid coordinates by hand. She circled the last position in red and drew a short arrow into the margin. A single note followed live vector mimicry, non-rotational. One line at the bottom of her satellite feed read, "No tasking assigned." It had been blinking quietly since she started the pass overlay. She reached out and muted the feed, just to silence the motion. No one else had touched that feed in over a week. She knew because her login was the only one listed in the access chain. She tapped the pen cap lightly against the corner of the desk, then slid it off and dropped it onto the surface beside her notes. There was no mistake. The convoy was real, and it was somewhere it never should have been. The message was short. Just one line. Hana Reyes stared at the reply from her former mentor. Still displayed at the top of the private thread. Let it go. You're not cleared. No greeting. No context. No defense of the anomaly she had flagged. She tapped the screen once to reread the thread, but the message blinked and vanished. System sync. The thread folded closed. The interface refreshed itself with the soft pulse of compliance. Her fingers remained poised over the keys, motionless. Behind her, the ambient light from the wall display shifted blue to green as the clock marked 1700. Shift change. The other analysts were packing up some chatting, some stretching, some already halfway to the exit. A tech brushed past her workstation and placed a spare cable on the desk without a word. His eyes met hers, then slid away. The console beeped. Her screen went gray. Sync mode engaged, terminal locked. It pulsed quietly. She tried the manual override. Nothing. A line of small text appeared at the bottom. Re-authentication required admin only. She didn't try again. Her badge still worked for the elevator. But the door opened slower than usual. She stood alone inside. Floor indicator blinking one number at a time as the hum of the motor filled the space. The air inside was warm, stagnant. When the doors parted, the hallway ahead was quiet. Fluorescent lights overhead cast flat shadows along the corridor floor. A vending machine buzzed just beyond the corner, its display blinking through selections no one had touched in hours. She passed it without slowing. On the right, the operations roster was posted behind glass. She stopped just long enough to scan the grid. Her name was gone. The next week's coverage slots showed 3 new entries in place of hers. No noches. No explanation. Just absence. Down the hall. The server room door stood propped open for ventilation. Cold air drifted into the hallway. The hum of machines filled the space like white noise, layered and constant. She stepped once into the frame, then backed out, without entering. A junior technician walked past, carrying a stack of cables. He nodded halfway, but didn't make eye contact. She nodded back, eyes already drifting to the flickering motion sensor, above the entryway. It stuttered once, then reset. Back at his desk, the anomaly logbook was still tucked beneath the keyboard. Untouched. The cup beside it remained half full. The coffee inside now, a stale skin of brown. She took the logbook and slid it into her side pocket without glancing around. The weight of it didn't change. The overhead lights dimmed slightly as the room entered power save. Her badge buzzed quietly when she tapped the exit gate. The delay just long enough to confirm she'd been flagged. No one stopped her. No one asked. She passed through the checkpoint. Into the corridor. Into silence. No denial. No confrontation. Just absence. Clean. Precise. And complete. The door hissed open with a soft magnetic click. Hana stepped into the imagery bay without turning on the overheads. The monitors cast a pale glow across the tiled floor, flickering in low rhythm. Enough to navigate by. Her boots made no sound against the synthetic paneling. She passed the empty workstations one by one. The only audible noise, a faint hum from the mainframe wall. At her terminal, she sat without hesitation. The chair creaked once under her weight. She logged in. Her credentials lit the upper corner of the screen. Sergeant Hana Reyes. Clearance active. Late access time-stamped at 2300. New questions? No flags. The system accepted her presence, if not her purpose. She opened the archive sandbox folder and scrolled until she reached the file labeled Calibration, Beta, Raise. Last modified 187 days ago. She tapped once, and the shell expanded. A long string of dormant parameters spread across the screen: altitude range, focal sweep angle, transmission ping delay. She highlighted the vector path, deleted the default, replaced it with a fresh line copied from her anomaly log. Then she changed the mission name to match protocol loop, validation. Her fingers hovered over the authorization field. She pressed her ID against the sensor plate. It blinked red once, then green. One line of warning text appeared: System alert, non-standard route tasking. Confirm override. She entered the override manually. 5 digits. A trick she had learned back when she trained others to use the same interface. The drone in question was already in orbit. It had no current assignment. The script would reroute it over Sector Echo 7 in 90 seconds, capture 12 thermal sweeps, and transmit on a secure channel coded to simulate diagnostic return. Unless someone was watching in real time, no alarm would trigger. It was designed that way. She copied the modified payload into the active queue. The code ran. The drone acknowledged. Transmission start confirmed. A timer began counting down in the corner of the screen. She didn't wait to watch it. Instead, she opened a blank notepad file and typed one word: confirm. She printed it on a post-it and pressed the paper flat against the corner of her monitor. The room remained silent. No one came through the door. No messages appeared. She encrypted the entire session log with a subroutine named Loop Validation No Archive. The system responded with a green checkmark. The window closed itself. For a moment, she sat still, palms flat against the desk. Then she reached down, opened her side pocket, and pulled out her anomaly logbook. She flipped to the last page and wrote the new timestamp just below the line she'd drawn 3 days ago. She did not add a conclusion. Behind her, the cooling system kicked in with a low shiver of air. She stood, left the monitor on, and walked out the same way she had entered, without a sound, without pause, without anyone knowing she had ever been there. The drone feed came online in static. White noise pulsed across the thermal screen in broken horizontal bars. Flickering. Unstable. Then it sharpened. Hana Reyes watched from her darkened terminal as the resolution settled over an arid slope. The ground was scored black, as if scraped by heat. Below, Rows of what had once been canvas tents lay torn and sagging, their skeletal frames outlined in uneven infrared. One flared white, collapsing as fire, consumed the final support strut. It fell like a curtain. Movement. Upper left quadrant. A vehicle thick, boxy, tracked. No insignia. No markings. But the infrared profile was exact. U.S. Armor. Just like the signature she'd flagged. Another came into view, followed by 3 figures with weapons drawn. They moved with practiced economy, fanning wide toward a cluster of debris. One dropped a case near a cinder block wall. The others crouched by what appeared to be a tunnel-mouth square. Reinforced. Unnatural. A 4th figure emerged from the corner of the frame, dragging someone by the arm. The person being pulled was small, wrapped in a light fabric. Not uniformed. Civilian. She twisted once, trying to pull away. The handler struck her across the back and shoved her between 2 vehicles. Her outline vanished behind the shadow of a truck. Hana's hand lifted. Her finger hovered just above the capture frame key. The screen flickered. A warning flashed in the corner yellow. Then red. Signal degrading. Vector recall pending. She didn't move. The drone feed held steady for 2 seconds longer. Then a new vehicle drove into view, half blocking the frame. Its engine radiated a steady, hot pulse. 2 men exited. One gestured sharply. The others followed. Hana's eyes locked on the screen. Her finger stayed poised. Then everything went black. The feed shut off mid-frame. The last frozen image lingered for half a second, just long enough to show the scorched tent field, the bunker entrance, and the heavy tire tracks leading in both directions. Then the interface collapsed. A system message replaced the video. Center screen. Bright red letters. Vector recall confirmed. Terminal 7 flagged. No archive remaining. Hana stared. The room remained dark around her. The servers behind her kept humming low. Steady. Unaware. She didn't blink. She didn't reach for the keyboard. The frozen afterimage still hovered behind her eyes, the collapsed aid tent, the dragged figure, the faceless operators loading gear into a structure that wasn't supposed to exist. The drone had captured it all, just long enough to confirm what she'd feared. This wasn't a mistake. It was an operation no one wanted traced. The system had chosen not to save it. She lowered her hand slowly. Her fingers still curled from the failed command. The keyboard glowed faintly, waiting for input that wouldn't come. Across the top of the screen, her login remained active. The only record that she had seen what the system tried to erase. She closed the lid, and in the dark, she stayed perfectly still. Hana Reyes arrived at her usual time. The imagery bay was quiet, too early for the full shift, but already humming with ambient light and background diagnostics. She scanned her badge at the door. It buzzed twice before unlocking. Inside, her station was exactly where she'd left it, Terminal 7. Second from the end. Chair pushed in. Screen dark. But standing beside it were 2 men in uniform. Not security. Military police. No weapons drawn. No orders barked. One simply nodded as she approached. Sergeant Reyes. The taller one said. Voice neutrale. You'll come with us. She didn't ask why. She didn't glance toward her console. She turned and walked between them without a word. The interview room had no name on the door. Just a small label, Room 12. Inside, the walls were gray and soundless. A single table. 2 chairs. No windows. A small dome in the ceiling watched everything. She sat. Across from her, 2 officers entered with a black folder and a tablet. The folder said, Preliminary, Level 2. The officer who opened it wore no rank insignia. He did not introduce himself. He flipped to the first page and began reading aloud. as though rehearsing a weather report. Terminal override executed at 2300 hours. Unauthorized reroute. No clearance chain. Resulting vector flag. Transmission terminated without archive. Initial drone telemetry flagged as anomalous. System unable to confirm contact event. The second officer, silent, tapped something into his tablet, eyes never lifting from Hana's face. The first officer continued. The footage was not preserved. Sergeant, there is no surviving visual log. The feed does not appear on the primary server chain. Your login, however, does. So does the sandbox script. Modified without approval. She said nothing. We've reviewed the logs. He went on. The operation you claim to have observed lacks validation. What you interpreted as a military engagement could have been misread artifact or simulation bleed. The simulation label appears in your task history. You've been on training loops for 6 months. Still, she said nothing. Do you understand what we believe you've done? Her eyes met his. She answered with a single word. Yes. The second officer looked up then, briefly, his expression unreadable. The tablet remained in his hand. But he stopped typing. A faint hum filled the space from the room's overhead ventilation. A console screen lit up behind them, showing a log file. Terminal 7. User ID Reyes. H. Vector override timestamp. DACE 3C0E. Protocol loop. Validation. A signature box blinked in the corner. It remained blank. The officer gestured toward the screen. You can acknowledge this or not. Either way, the review will proceed. Hana didn't move. After 20 silent seconds, they closed the folder. No accusation. No threat. She was escorted out the same way she had come. Not one voice raised. Not one hallway paused. The only trace she had left was a blank signature field and a system log the servers would soon forget. But not her. The barracks held 12 bunks. But Hana Reyes had the space to herself. The lights dimmed automatically at 2200, leaving only the emergency glow strips above the doors and the faint blue cast of a status panel near the ceiling. The cot was firm. Standard issue. A folded uniform lay untouched on the metal chair beside it. Fresh. Unscented. Creased too sharply to have been worn. The air was dry, circulating softly through a ceiling vent that clicked every 7 seconds. She lay on her back, one arm across her chest. Eyes open. The mattress didn't shift beneath her. Outside the wall, someone's boots moved past. Too quick to belong to a guard. Then silence. A soft whisper of motion broke the quiet. The edge of an envelope slid under the door, just enough to clear the threshold. White. Unmarked. No seal. She sat up, reached for it, and pulled it into her lap. No name. No return address. Just her. Inside, one sheet of paper. Printed thermal still. Clean. High resolution. The same terrain she'd seen on the feed, but from a better angle. The aid tents were visible in full structure, their edges beginning to curl inward from fire. A figure, mid-stride, ran from the right corner of the frame toward the open dirt beyond the camp. Smoke layered the upper right. Flat and heavy. Behind the central truck, a shape bent low, distinct. Detailed. Movement paused in one captured frame. No blur. No misinterpretation. Below the image, in neat handwriting, one set of coordinates, marked in red. A single phrase beneath it. You were right. Keep going. She stared at the print. Her eyes didn't widen. Her breath didn't change. She simply traced the latitude once with her thumb, then folded the page in half, again in quarters, and rose from the cot. The barracks sink stood waist-high in the corner. She turned the tap. Let a thin stream run until it warmed slightly. The folded sheet rested against the steel edge for a moment, then dropped into the basin. She struck a match, one flame, cupped in her hand. She touched it to the corner and stepped back. The paper burned evenly, curling in waves. She watched until the last black edge dissolved. By morning, the cot was made. The folded uniform sat precisely where she had left it. The air remained still, the vent clicking overhead like a slow clock. A knock sounded. Just once. She was already standing. Outside the door, a non-commissioned officer held a clipboard. "You're being released. No further action for now." She nodded once, past him without a word. Behind her, the barracks door clicked shut. No one had spoken her name. No one had acknowledged the message, but the coordinates remained, mapped in memory, clear and precise. She hadn't captured the frame. Someone else had. Someone still watching. She stepped into the hallway and didn't look back. The elevator played a soft, instrumental version of a song she couldn't name. Hana Reyes stood at the center of the car, motionless. Her ID badge clipped neatly to her chest. Where it once displayed her full name and clearance rank, it now read Temp, Review Pending, in dull gray type. She did not look at it. The doors opened onto level 2. The hallway stretched quiet and bare. She approached the first door on the left, scanned her badge. The reader blinked red. Twice. Access denied. She didn't pause. At the next door, the same result. A longer pause. A shorter beep. She turned down the hallway without a word. The imagery division was already active. Monitors glowed, and chairs rolled as junior analysts rotated through their morning tasks. Hana entered without announcement. No one stopped her. But no one greeted her either. Her old station was occupied. The name tag had been removed. The screen displayed a live pass from Northern Command. She watched the new operator scroll through frames with a stylus, nodding at nothing. 2 terminals down. A technician hovered near the admin console. He navigated to a maintenance log, selected a file labeled Calibration, Beta, Reyes, and pressed delete. The system asked for confirmation. He tapped. Yes. The folder vanished. She moved past without acknowledging him. The break room smelled of coffee and microwaved rice. A digital board cycled through staff commendations. Her name wasn't listed. Not as past contributor. Not at all. She didn't sit. Instead, she opened her side bag and removed 2 items, a small, worn anomaly logbook with bent corners and a thin, padded envelope. The logbook was creased open to a page marked in red ink coordinates, cross-reference times, heat variances. She looked at it once more, then folded it shut and slid it into the envelope. Behind it, she placed a single photo print crisp. Clear. Unsigned. No metadata. She sealed the envelope. Wrote 3 words across the front in block letters. Loop Integrity Review. No return address. Downstairs, the building's mail kiosk buzzed with low automation. She bypassed the labeled chutes and placed the envelope into the open drop, marked unsorted. It slipped through the slot without resistance. Across from her, a public terminal blinked awake. She tapped once, logged into the guest interface, and entered a routing address for an external military oversight channel. No message. No subject. Just an encrypted file. She clicked send. She did not stay to confirm transmission. The screen dimmed behind her. Outside, the hallway stretched quiet again. Voices murmured from the break room. Indistinct. Her footsteps echoed faintly on the polished floor. No alarms. No raised voices. No clearance revoked on record. She paused once before reaching the exit. Her badge scanned green. But the reader took longer this time. Almost a hesitation. She walked through. Behind her, the system reset. Logs cleared. Screens refreshed. The building swallowed the moment whole. But the envelope remained in motion. And her logbook was no longer hers alone. The office smelled faintly of dusted blinds and old carpet. The kind of scent that didn't shift, no matter how often the windows were cracked. Sunlight poured across the floor in flat rectangles, broken only by the rhythm of office chairs rolling across linoleum. Outside the window beside her desk, birds passed between satellite dishes, small black arcs on a blue sky. Hana Reyes worked in the far corner, 3 desks from the rear exit, near a half-functioning printer and an emergency weather radio no one had used since orientation. Her workspace was clean. The wall calendar at her side listed rainfall tracking benchmarks and scheduled flyover passes for atmospheric observation. A red line circled the 15th cloud anomaly review. She hadn't written it. Her mug read pattern analyst, in worn gray letters. There were no photos, no decorations, just a single drawer. She opened it slowly, removed a single page, and laid it flat beside her keyboard. The paper was creased, its corners worn from folding. A faint red line curved through the center, a path drawn from a memory no longer stored in any official record. A thermal route, the same erased corridor, her handwriting still visible at the top sector designation. Vector timing, elevation thresholds. She picked up a mechanical pencil and pulled a civilian satellite grid from the day's stack. It was low-res, old orbit, but the latitude matched. Her hand moved steadily. No rush, tracing a mirrored arc across the map's grainy terrain. The new line met the curve she remembered. She folded the paper neatly once more, placed it beside the updated overlay, and adjusted their alignment with a fingertip, one world hidden within another. The room behind her buzzed with ambient conversation. 2 analysts argued gently over a thermal bloom from yesterday's Gulf Pass. A weather tech scrolled through precipitation models with one hand while sipping juice from the other. Screens blinked quietly. None labeled classified. No one noticed Hana. Her pencil tapped once against the map's edge. She looked toward the far monitor, where a new satellite feed ticked across the corner screen. She let it run. There was no urgency. She wasn't here to report. She wasn't here to be listened to. She was just watching. The satellite drifted over a wide plateau, passing the coordinates she'd memorized. Nothing visible. Not anymore. But she still mapped the vector as if it mattered. As if the erased route still left a shadow that could be measured. She whispered once, not loud enough to carry. Not loud enough to break the room's quiet rhythm. Just enough to give shape to what remained. The loop remembers. The pencil returned to its place. The page stayed open. Her screen refreshed with a new timestamp. She didn't look away. Not even as the sun shifted through the blinds and cast a stripe across the paper she'd chosen to keep. Hana Reyes watched. Not for recognition. Not for rank. Just to know the sky was still telling the truth if someone remembered how to read it. Hana Reyes was never the loudest voice in the room. She didn't demand recognition, and she didn't expect it. But when the system failed to see what mattered, she did what no one else would. She watched, she listened, and when silence was safer, she still chose to act. Her story isn't one of grand rebellion or medals. It's about the quiet persistence of someone who refuses to look away. In a world that erases what it can't explain, she chose to remember, and because of that, someone else did too. If her story moved you, take a moment to reflect on the power of presence without permission. Share your thoughts in the comments or follow for more stories like this about the quiet ones who hold the line when no one's watching.